Hi guys, welcome back to 10 Minute Reviews. Jason here bringing you today's video. Please hit the like and subscribe buttons. We have a ton of videos coming out for you guys. All we want to do is read and talk about books and talk about authors. Hopefully one day I can retire to where I read 10, 12 hours a day, shoot videos an hour a day and go to sleep. That would be ideal. So again, please hit the like and subscribe buttons. We'd really appreciate it. It's just what we like to do. So for today I want to go to a different genre than we've talked about in the past. I want to talk about Westerns. I'm going to talk about a Western book. This is actually one of the genres that I'm a fan of. I'm going to have a lot of content that I can film for this particular genre. I want to talk about one of the best and most well-known Western authors in one of his books. I want to talk about Matt Braun, and it's spelled B-R-A-U-N. I want to talk about his book, Deathwalk. Now, my favorite of Matt Braun's books are the historical fiction type books. And what he does, he's got a lot of books where he takes an event or a person and takes most of what we know about their lives, or at least some of it, and fictionalizes it. And so, you almost, in a way, you could almost feel like you're reading a history book, except that there's a lot of things that are fictionalized, because we don't know a lot of the details. And he'll make people out to be a little bit better than they were historically, if they happen to be the main character. So Deathwalk. So I'm going to talk about four things, as usual. I'm going to talk about the world, the characters, the plot, and the writing style. So the world is, of course, the Old West. That's it. Done talking about the world. So, characters. Characters, we are talking about Ben Thompson. Ben Thompson is very, very well known. The Old West is kind of one of my passions as far as history goes, so I've done a lot of studying on on the Old West, and especially the gunslingers. For instance, I could tell you that probably the greatest gunslinger that ever lived, nobody's ever heard of, Jim Levy, the tiny little Jewish guy. So I've read a lot about Ben Thompson. Now, like a lot of the Old West gunslingers, especially the famous gunslingers, he walked both sides of the line. A lot of your most famous gunslingers that worked as law enforcement, town sheriffs and marshals, stuff like that. If you dig deep enough into their history, they also were on the other side. For instance, Wyatt Earp was probably a cattle rustler, and he was definitely a horse thief. And that's so. I mean, Kingfisher was known as an outlaw gunslinger, and eventually he became a sheriff. It's kind of like Ben Thompson. Now, Ben Thompson was mostly known as a gambler, but he also had some time periods where he walked the other side of the line, although in Deathwalk that's not really talked about. He is mostly just looked at as a gambler, and kind of a dapper gambler, not quite Luke Short level dapper, but well dressed in the Western suits, and always well dressed, but of course always carried his pistol. Known to have a little bit of a short temper, of a short temper, quick with his guns, quick with his fists, and like the real Ben Thompson was definitely an excellent gunslinger. So the plot. Well, at one time period, Ben Thompson was a sheriff. He was a sheriff in Texas, and this book covers that time period, which is unfortunate because the story of Thompson's death, which also involved another extremely famous gunslinger, is very, very interesting, but this book doesn't go out to that far. This just covers one fairly small time period where basically Ben Thompson comes to this town. He's just a gambler. That's all he wants to be. He's a gambler, sometimes a business owner, gambling halls, of course, saloons, stuff like that. And he kind of gets sort of crossways of the current sheriff and some of the politicians, and basically somebody tells him, well, if you don't like it, if you think it could be done better, do it yourself. Put up or shut up. And at a certain point, he decides, well, okay, I'm going to do that. So he ends up running for sheriff and actually wins. And this book primarily covers that time period in his life where he's the sheriff, but adds a few more twists to it. For instance, back in those days, generally the sheriff, the only way you would even know the sheriff of a western town would be the star on their chest. But Ben Thompson actually takes some Eastern ideas in the book and incorporates them, such as the police force ends up with uniforms that he himself wears. So just to be, one of the guys in a way. But unfortunately, Thompson still can't control some of his basic instincts, so he ends up helping a friend and getting in a gunfight in another town, ends up on trial for that, wins that, ends up in another gunfight, kills that person, and at a certain point he decides himself that perhaps his reputation and his temper aren't quite good enough to be sheriff. So he ends up stepping down and allowing his number two, who would be an excellent sheriff, to step up and take the role. As far as the writing style goes, Matt Braun writes awesome westerns. He really, really, really writes westerns well. The dialogue it's gripping. The characters are well fleshed out. Their motivations are very, very, very clear. The only knock you might want to give Matt Braun is every single one of his characters is extraordinarily articulate. Not Deadwood level articulate. That's more Shakespearean, but they're very, very articulate. They're very, very self-examining, I suppose, really good at their own, at articulating, at examining their own motivations and articulating them, introspective, very, very much so. And for people that have actually studied the Old West, education was something that was very, 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 very low. Someone that was extraordinarily educated in those times might have finished like the 5th grade. So that would be the only knock I would put on Matt Braun's writing styles. All his characters are very articulate, very intelligent, very well read. But outside of that, his books are extremely gripping. He writes the West very, very well, makes it very, very entertaining. The true Old West is a little bit different than most people would think from modern movies and modern books, but Matt Braun makes it interesting, and that's what's important. These books are supposed to be entertaining after all. So if you guys are fans of the Western genre or just looking for something new to read, go check out Matt Braun, Deathwalk. It's a really good one of his books. Please hit the like and subscribe buttons, and we'll catch you next time. Bye now.